Good evening. I call this board meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please be advised in the event of a fire emergency, an alarm will sound. Please note all emergency exits and evacuate well away from the building. At this time, we request everyone please turn your cell phones to silent. Thank you for your cooperation. Additions, deletions, and changes to the agenda, please.
Yes, I have two additions under 8.8 and 8.9, school bus intermunicipal cooperative agreements with the York and Leroy school districts. That's it.
And when we get to that, I have to read the whole thing.
You can, as listed.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for the consent agenda 1 through 7, please?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. That motion carried. Communications, correspondence.
There are none other than what's in your board packet.
Okay, we didn't have any points of pride listed either, did we?
No, we will have that next time.
Thank you. Guests of the board, Mr. John, got it already. Rankowitz, it's not written here, is here from our auditor, or from our CPA firm to review the audit.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. A few moments ago, we walked through this report with your audit committee. We had a really good meeting, good discussion about the results of the year and where the district's at. Lots of good questions, so it was a very good meeting. I'm going to touch on some of the highlights of what we talked about. You do have available to you the financial statements and the management letter. What we walked through was the executive summary report, which is just kind of a quicker focus on some of the specific funds. We talked about your general fund and the how the district's doing, and the district had a very good year, a strong year this past year. You were able to set aside money in reserves, and we talked about how important that is. So the district's doing what it should be doing as far as setting monies aside for future budgeting, and this district has done a very good job of that and continues to do so. So when we're looking at your financial condition, that's what we're looking at, and so very good to see that. Here, walk through some of your other funds and talked about the financial condition with those, and things are looking fine with your other funds as well. So we had no concerns or areas of concern there, and we'll talk about that. You also have the management letter, which is required communication on our part to mention any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. Your district doesn't have any, so very good job again this year. We did have a couple of items that we talked through, just a couple corrective items. Your business official will be putting together a corrective action plan for those items. And so nothing major, but we walked through those. And again, had a good discussion there. One item from last year that we recommended has already been fixed, so we're happy to see that as well. That's what I have for you. Any questions on the statements or management letter? Anything I can talk?
So,
Thank you.
I'll do it then. I mean, you're saying that overall that our financial health for what we need is very good. If you had to give it a, grade, we're not asking for a grade, we're very good and we're on the right track.
Yes. So based on what we're seeing, you're doing what you should be doing, managing your funds, and set up to move forward and everything with your plans. So yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll vote to approve or that we've accepted it later in the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Safe travels.
We have, nobody signed up. I'm going to take this moment, even though it's not on the agenda, to acknowledge somebody whose very last official school board meeting is tonight. Your last day will be before we convene again, and you will never have to come here at 6 or 6:05 on a second Tuesday.
That's what they'll remember.
For the official record, I think the first time I met Mr. Bolter was when my family moved in, or was about to move into the district, and we actually we were about to move, and we toured the district. We actually chose where we lived because of the district. And I think Mr. Bolter was being duct taped to the wall by the students for them exceeding a reading goal, was it, right? That's correct. And then when we came back another day, he did give us a great tour of the district. And my daughter Rachel, who is graduating this year as a senior, came into this district in the pre-K program. So that's how long. I know that a lot of you have known him for much longer, but I really thank you for your service and to this district. It's been fantastic to have you.
He's gonna be a substitute, right? Later.
Can't wait.
Bus driver, he's gonna be a bus driver.
Bus driver.
Thanks for the commitment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report, Mr. Malasani, the proposed capital project.
Yes, I'll briefly go through this. This is old news for all of you. I'll actually do an official presentation for the community coming up here in early November, or middle of November for the vote that's going to be on December 5th. For those that have been either a part of the facilities team, or for a lot of you that have seen this information probably 3 or 4 times, but for the sake of putting something online, make it readily available to our community, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Advance it one. All right, so we're going to talk about our mission, vision, and goals. And so when we created this project, we put together our goals. What do we want to accomplish? And it stems from our mission as a school district. We'll talk about the highlights that are going to occur in the elementary school in terms of the proposed work, as well as in middle high school, and then financially, how much will this project actually cost our community? So with respect to our mission and vision, we focus on safety, the safety aspect of the project, and also providing our academic component. You'll see probably our largest purchase of either, in this case, we will be renovating classrooms for an academic program in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and there's some arts in there as well. So again, here was our major goal, was to have capital improvements in the project designed to enhance the district's facilities, then focusing on technology, innovations, health and safety improvements, and the replacement of aging infrastructure. All right, so in the elementary school is what we're looking at here. The milling of the driveway is all the way up through, goes all the way to the back, and the south parking lot, which is located here. Those will be milled and replaced. The actual elementary loop will actually be torn out and started over because it's no longer usable. They'll replace storm drains, and then also they'll have new sidewalks going into the elementary school, as well as a granite curb, which will last a lot longer than our current cement ones. So with respect to other improvements, the high cost improvements, I'm not going to get into dollars and cents, but the roof replacement will be for the 1937 building, which is the front of the building. That'll all be replaced. We're also replacing all the windows on the west side and south side. That's where much of our weather comes from. We're looking at over $1 million just in windows. Other things, we're looking at a secure entryway into the elementary office area. We will be putting a set of doors that immediately go upstairs. That's all going to be partitioned off for safety measures. And then we're also going to move the current front doors, moving ahead about 15 to 20 feet for additional spacing. And then there'll be a new entry where people will not be getting into the building immediately. They'll come to a secure area. then be buzzed into a waiting area, and then have an opportunity to either come into the office area or into a conference room, whatever the need may be.
Has that been designed yet?
We're working
in
on
the
that
design.
design, yeah. We're pretty close, but we are refining it. I'm gonna have Dave and Michelle, or at least Dave, talk about the STEM spaces. Dave? Actually, Dave, before you do that, you can go ahead. I'll just talk about in the elementary too, we're looking at some renovations for the house lights, paint, and like a facelift in the elementary auditorium, as well as some acoustical, I guess, soundproofing and so forth. So go ahead, Dave. One more. So, go ahead, Bill, talk.
Okay. One of the things, and this went on our building condition survey, probably, oh gosh, it must have been on there 10 years, where I've asked, the movement within schools is to have some type of STEM, STEAM space within the library structure, and we were always trying to figure out a way in order to accomplish that. And what seemed to be the best way of doing that is to have that combination of a library and a STEM and STEAM areas, to combine it with rooms, really a classroom right next to the library. And then we never, I didn't know if I'd ever be around for the renovation or even the talk of the design of it. But what we are going to do is take our present footprint of our library, that's going to remain the same, but also add the classroom next to it. Due to decreasing enrollment, we have some space in a larger building, and then create a space that would both handle the library instruction and also the opportunity to have, like, I would say it's more of a flexible space where they're talking about having windows or doors that kind of slide, where you could have a larger group space or a separate STEM and STEAM space where they're getting into the electrical and like the engineering type stuff. You'll see some sinks in there in the orange part of that. And really that wall between the yellow and the orange could be movable. And just the last meeting, we talked about that either being solid or movable, and there's kind of pros and cons to both. This would actually be the space, that would be the space more in the elementary library. And that's the first run at it. What we do have to do is we have to bring Mrs. Monahan in there and have her see that space. They get really creative in library furniture. And it's one of those things, like, I would have an opinion on that. Like, as a teacher, I'd look at that and say, I love it, or there's no way every kid's gonna fight over the egg chair, okay? So you would we do have to bring in those stakeholders, but what they've done so far is they've really taken the library and they've had that space, and then way on that other side of the wall where they have the X's, that could be a movable wall into this space. So you have more of a flexible space where there'd be lots of storage. There would be actually a walk-in closet if it were to store all our STEAM and STEM items that we're using with our kids now, and have a more usable space for that, because we really don't have that. What we also don't have is an area where you could hold, 50 kids or a grade level and do stuff. The library would allow us to do that. So we're in the process of kind of refining that. Presently, we have Rita Merlot is one of the teachers next year for kindergarten and first grade that would actually be kind of taking work with the STEAM type curriculum. And that would be probably phase one of that. Most schools, if you look around, they do have a dedicated STEAM teacher for that. And that's just something that you'll see and you'll hear. It's not something that's going away, it's something that we are building. She's gonna start with that next year with the hopes that that would grow into a full-time position. It might be reallocating staff or kind of being creative on how we do that. But we do have to move in that direction. And then really the challenge will be, where does it fit within the library? Is it a library thing? That's done in a lot of schools right in the library. But then the librarians are saying, well, how do I do all the STEAM stuff and do all the library skills? It is that balance, and probably scheduling is going to be the biggest challenge people will face.
It's a different content area too,
yeah.
so that was something that we've been looking at the curriculum, both in library and in STEM and STEAM innovation. When you're talking about engineering concepts, library media specialist is simply trained differently. And so the teacher we've put in that position has been going into professional development and cohorts in our area, learning about the STEM and STEAM standards and computer science standards, so there'll be that tech component. I kind of think of it as the computer lab back in the day is now an innovation space where it can be timeless and flexible to adapt to anything that we don't know what the future is going to hold, but we need a space to be able to think future, future-wise, futuristic. So I think a simple space like that, without too many bells and whistles, but plenty of electrical outlets, some sound muffling for group collaboration, and a lot of storage is really a way to be flexible. So that's what we
All right, on to the middle high school. So again, you're looking at a middle school loop that will be a tear out and start over. And the high school will be a mill and replace with respect to parking lots. Same concept, restructuring that main office with their secure entrance. You'll see a picture here. Actually, no, you won't see it just yet. You'll see it in November, where we're talking about allocating one of the set of doors being a secure entranceway, where it basically becomes a waiting room, so people are not coming in and out. Whereas if there was a visitor in the waiting area and one of the kids come out through the door, allow somebody to come in. We're going to restrict that opportunity where we're only going to be using the secure area. Again, also aligning a secure conference room and putting in both the middle and high school offices, just restructuring there. One of the things I didn't mention at the elementary school is a boiler replacement. That'll be done in the elementary, whereas up here in the middle high school, it's going to be boiler upgrades to make sure our facilities are all set. The PA system, we're looking at a comprehensive system. Originally you just think of your PA system, we do your morning announcements. There's so much more capacity today in terms of the systems. We're looking at a minimum of just the PA system. Ours doesn't work all the time here at the middle high school. And we're looking potentially also with the opportunity to have a bell system as well as a camera system in classrooms. So we're looking at all those to see whatever the money certainly can provide. Roof replacement, it's not so much replacements, it's going to be looking at areas that have been weathered. We've done a test on all of our roofs to see if there's any moisture underneath them, and those that are starting to fail, we will be fixing those, whereas in the elementary school, it is a roof replacement system. Auditorium upgrades, we're potentially looking at seating right now. The focus is on the ceilings, the lighting, sound, and then the control room. That's going to be the major focus, and then if the seating does allow us to permit, we have roughly $700,000, almost $800,000 set aside for auditorium renovations in the middle high school. But I think the sound, ceiling, lighting, and sound control room is the priority first. And then I'll have Dr. Schnell talk about the science, technology, engineering, architecture, and mathematics.
So at the middle and high school, we're talking about touching a couple of areas. Right now, we're focused on making sure that the library gets its way in there. Jeremy, if you'll advance the slide. Basically taking the library as it currently stands and renaming it to an innovation center. So in our conceptual sort of philosophy moving forward with this project, we really want to create a space where it makes sense for teachers to leave their classrooms and kind of ascend on an innovation center. So that not just the librarian would be teaching out of this space, but it would become a space that's really open. So with a lot of intentionality, again, if you could advance, with a lot of intentionality, we would be looking at taking the library, there's a current computer lab there, taking the wall down between the library and the computer lab, and putting in some glass that closes off and becomes very sealed so that whatever is happening in that old computer lab, you do have all the sound, whatever's happening in the library does not impact what's happening now in our new Innovation Media Center. The Media Center will be stocked with all the technology you could imagine for making sure that our kids can do high quality video production. You'll see a lot of classroom teachers are assigning that kind of video production right now for the projects that our kids are doing in their classrooms. A lot of that is supported right by our librarian and through our center, but we're pretty makeshift in there. This is now going to give us the ability to not just run our morning announcements in a real professional looking way, but also for kids to be able to do video production and editing inside the media center. That component of the media center is also going to have a doorway that opens into the art room. So if you just start thinking about these as shared spaces, the concept of innovation is that it's no longer my classroom where I teach, but it is a room that has been designed to facilitate innovation. And so we come to it in order to get this kind of work done. So the media work that we do inside of the art classroom, the door would be right there so that that is accessible to many teachers, just conceptually. The library itself, you'll see like here where it's labeled, you'll see it says group 3, group 4, group 5. In the library, we're basically going to create learning spaces where you'll have giant TV screens like the one you're looking at here, where kids would be able to have movable, very comfortable, ergonomic chairs that they could sit on that would hold their Chromebook. So they could sit in a pod as a group and actually have the project that they're working on together displayed very easily for the teacher to be able to see that the group is in fact working on the project they're supposed to be working on and making progress. The system that we'll build in there, I believe we have 6 group breakout sessions like that. So as a classroom teacher, you could come down and put your class into 6 groups. Again, you would ask, why would I leave my classroom? Our classrooms are pretty row and column when you're in the class, table, your chair, desk combination. When you're doing the pre-work in your lesson, it makes complete sense for kids to be sitting there during the lecture, during note-taking. The minute you want to like put them into groups, it would be a great reason to get to the Innovation Center. Get your kids in groups. The furniture down there will be prepared for that. The technology down there will be prepared for that. The technology will also allow us, when we're teaching in that space, to take over the screens at one time. So a teacher could actually just like grab the screens back to their own personal computer that they're working from and be able to do direct instruction again if they felt the need to turn the kids back over into their group work. On the far back side of there, let me just scroll and see. I don't think we have a picture of it. Go back one. So you're going to have to look really hard and you're going to see our entrepreneur studio. So right now we have on the other side of the library, there's the school resource officer's office is in there. Sarah Santora's office was on that back end. We have a library prep room back there. You're going to see in this project us taking up that space and creating an entrepreneur studio. The entrepreneur studio is basically our corner where if you are teaching career and technical education at the middle level, designing your business model, wanting to take your business to fruition, the entrepreneur studio is going to become our place where our point of sale will happen. So right around the corner from that, you're moving into the high school tech wing. The tech wing and our all of the technology that we're doing right now, a lot of innovation where the kids are doing a lot of creating. Same thing, you're going to have sort of that point of sale for them to be able to bring their work to a sale point. Long term, thinking about the curriculum connection here, we'd like to see our CTE running 6 through 12, where our middle school kids, their curriculum is taking them all the way through entrepreneurship when they're in 8th grade. So by the time they're in high school, they're starting to produce inside Mr. Harvey's classroom and helping those 8th graders just kind of keep their business model moving so that the things that we're designing, we actually can turn around and build ourselves to take into our point of sale and keep our entrepreneur studio nice and healthy. So that is our
Dr.
Innovation
Steiner,
Center.
You wanted to just talk briefly about utilizing the current tech wing?
So basically, with the same concept, we've started to look at the technology. I didn't mention it when we were on the slide because I'm afraid it's not going to make the project, although we're mapping it out. I just don't know financially.
That's a good point. So this is a priority 2. So if we can get to this either an alternative bid or wherever to get alternate bid, this is our hope with continuing the STEAM and STEM at the middle high school. So what I'm referring to is this area here. This is not in the current project in terms of what we will bid.
But it's
if money's
going in the
available.
scope in
Yes.
case we have money. Like sometimes at the end of a project, if we have money to keep moving, it's definitely going in the scope. So the same philosophical underpinning there is going to be that concept of Innovation Center, where we have the space in our building to be thinking about how art and science and technology and the career and technical business component, how it all touches. We have the space to do that, whether we're talking about high-tech things that need to be really clean and airtight, or whether we're talking about the messy stuff where we've got wood that's being cut and put together. We have the technical space to do it, but what we have right now is still that feeling that like this classroom belongs to Mrs. Streb, this classroom belongs to Mrs. Barber, this classroom belongs to Mr. Harvey. In phase 2, if we can get to it, we would like to connect these two innovation centers in ways that would allow Mr. Harvey to be teaching on this side of the glass, while Mr. Flynn is actually on this side of the glass and he's running a science project. So maximizing our space to create flexibility of space use. Yes, sir.
Those three names that you just mentioned are all people, all teachers that have brought their classes out of their classroom into your innovative center at the same time, and they're doing their thing for the day.
So what keeps them from being able to leave their classroom right now is that our classrooms are currently designed to be pretty isolated. So you would see, for example, like in the wood shop, you would see that teachers of science are making their way down to Mr. Harvey for him to help them solve a problem that they have to be able to create a lab space. Like in the reality of this design, it would be that we would open up the center. It's a little bit hard probably
Is
for
there
you guys
still
to
a
see.
library, or is it
Oh,
just
yes.
a,
Oh, yes.
this innovative center? I guess I'm not getting it.
Okay, so there's definitely still a library. I wish we could blow this up. Is there, Jeremy, can you hit the plus button? Make it really big?
Can you see that, John?
I'm all right, but where is the space?
So
that this
the
invades?
library currently takes up, the library, right, this is the library's current floor plan. It's pretty big. So when we create the entrepreneur studio, we're actually gonna take on another classroom
Oh,
in order to do that. So
You
you're
said
gonna
that.
expand,
I'm
you're gonna
sorry.
expand, that's okay, you're gonna expand the footprint. The same thing is gonna happen on the other side of the library. Right now, it was an old computer lab. We're basically just going to create, there's a wall here, which is just restrictive. So what we'd like to do is in all of our designs, create walls that are movable. So we went and visited quite a few schools to get a sense of what this looks like. They're beautiful glass doors that close so that they can be soundproof, whatever's happening on either side of that glass, but also like visually, that the librarian still has supervision. You have a couple of kids in there and they're making a video for health class, the librarian can still see them. So you don't get the supervision issue by removing the walls. But it also allows other people to use the space. So she could still be teaching a 6th grade library class and have a class in there, and you could have things going on in the entrepreneur studio, and you could have things going on in the media studio.
thank you.
You're welcome. And then the same thing when you get over, same concept of innovation when you get into the tech, if we're able to touch that, is that we would open up some spaces where you could get through to the other components of our technology classroom without disrupting the teaching that might be happening in one area. So just basically changing not so much our floor print, but the layout that we have and the accessibility to all the resources that we have, with this underpinning of innovation, meaning that spaces are not defined, but there's a purpose for going there, and the technology that you need exists there to facilitate what you're trying to do.
So financials, with respect to this project, we will be going out of the $15.2 million project. Right now, there will be no cost impact to our community. The money will be taken from our reserves. So no additional tax impact for this $15.2 million project. So again, timing-wise, I think those that have been around the board for a long time, the timing is right. We will have debt coming off our books. We'll keep our contribution very steady. Won't have peaks and valleys in your budgeting. Obviously, it's preparing our students for the next generation in terms of what skill set they must possess in order to have a successful career. Obviously, protecting our community's investment in our buildings, putting on new roofs and windows. The windows in the elementary school do not close, or rarely close, or for a closed site, especially on the second floor. So just taking care of the assets that you have created here. And again, also addressing educational, health, and safety needs of our students is the reasons why we're moving forward with this project. Any questions? So those are big picture items. There's a lot more detail. I shared that with the board, I think, a couple of meetings ago. And as we continue to refine the project, that will be shared with the board. Our goal is like any other thing, under promise and over deliver. So I think you've seen some area school districts that went out with the capital project and said they're going to do X, Y, and Z. All of a sudden, the bids come in and still went up 60, 80%, and now they can't deliver the project in which they promised to the community. We put protective factors in this so that we hope that we can do more. But at the very least, we believe our base package will be a doable package as we know the environment, the financial environment, and the market at this time. Okay.
All right, moving on to Superintendent's Report number 2, the ELA and math state tests for grades 3 through 8. Last time you'll have to do this.
All right. You can just go to the next slide. The ELA test results, one of the things that's different this year is these tests actually measure the New York State Next Generation Standard, so it's a new test measuring new things. So when we look at historical data, you're not comparing apples to apples anymore. So that we kind of put it in red, and it did behave differently. When you talk to the teachers after the exam, they said, boy, this was very different for our third graders, and fifth grade said the same thing. And I said, well, we really compare things on two different ways. So when you look at this, I would caution looking back over the years, because usually we look for trends on the same test, and that makes some sense. This is a new exam measuring new things, and it's going to behave differently. So what we waited for is really two things. Is we looked to the GV BOCES average first to see what is, overall, what did the 22 school districts, what did they score? Give us a sample of how difficult this test is. And you will see the difficulty, for example, on the grade 3 exam, when the teachers came down and told me, boy, this is very hard this was not an easy test for our kids. I said, but it's a brand new test. Let's see how we do. And this used to be our old fifth grade doing the same thing, if you remember back. So the average for the GV BOCES was 31% at levels 3 and 4. And our students scored at 42%. And then you look at that, and that's ranked third in the region out of 22 districts. So when you start looking at that, you can kind of get an idea of how difficult this test was. For grade 4, the GV BOCES average was 31%. Our students at levels 3 and 4 scored at 67%, and we were first in the region out of 22 schools. And in fifth grade, following that same logic, the region scored at 46% is an average. Our students scored at levels 3 and 4 at 51%, and we were ranked second out of 22 schools. So you kind of, when you look at numbers, it's hard to compare them. When you compare them to other schools and the difficulty of the exam, it gets you an idea. Overall, we were very pleased with how well we did. When you look at just a percentage, it's never great. Like, it's kind of, you have to look at it in context. So Becky, I don't know if you want to talk to
Do you want
the...
to skip that and go to the math? And then go
I
back?
could, yeah. So the math, if we follow that same logic, and historically, we've done very well in mathematics, and we continue to do well in mathematics. For grade 3, our GV BOCES had an average of 41%, and we had at levels 3 and 4, and we had 68% at level 3 and 4, ranking first in our 22 schools. For grade 4, the region average was 48%. We had 58% of our students scoring at levels 3 and 4, and we were fourth in the region. And in grade 5, it was 47% for our GV BOCES average. We scored 64%, and that put us fourth in the region. Well, the next step is really to compare ourselves bigger than our BOCES region, but it makes sense to start there because they're schools similar to us. We will, of course, look at everyone, see how everyone compared, and then if there are things that we need to look at or visit schools that are doing exceptionally well, we will. But overall, we were pretty pleased with what we saw. So any questions on this state tests? Again, I wouldn't compare it. If you look for trends, it's a brand new test. So just a reminder.
All right, now we will do the 6, 7, and 8. Like Dave said, it's going to follow that same pattern. So we do like to take a look at where we settle in the region. That just is sort of like, I usually compare it to, like if you were to look at a chart of body mass index, right? You're like, what's my height and what's my weight, so where am I? Like, you have to give yourself some sort of norm. So you'll often find that we talk about that. Like, we want to see what did we look like across the region. We also look for how we fared with similar schools, like not just our entire region of the 22, but like how did we do when we're looking at some of the schools that we more run with or chase after. Right now in our ELA results, you'll see across the region, even the schools that we're chasing after, we did very well this year. So we ranked first in 8th grade, second in 7th grade, and third in 6th grade. Again, if you're paying attention to the numbers, you do see that our 6th grade took a little bit of a dive there. But like Dave said, it's a bit of a different test. What you're gonna see, well, you might not see, but what is happening on the inside that you will not watch right now is that all of our teachers will start to do a very deep dive into their data. They're gonna be looking at individual student results. They're gonna look at how kids did last year on grade 6 and how they did when they were in the 5th grade as we're preparing for them going into grade 7. So teachers are gonna be paying very close attention to individual student data. They're also gonna take a look at trend data because they are gonna wanna see standards over time. So they've gotten data reports right now that are gonna let them look back at least the last 3 years by standard, just to get a sense of how did the test change? Did they change the way they're asking the question? How are they currently measuring the standards? So teachers, regardless whether we came in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 10th, right? We're gonna be digging in deeply into what does that mean for each individual child.
Becky just also
yes.
CTB.
Oh yes, and we were fully computer-based testing last year. So all of our kids, other than those who might have an individualized education plan, where we felt, where at the table, the Committee on Special Education felt like the computerized test wouldn't be good for them. That definitely happened when we looked at some of our math results. Most of our kids tested computer-based on the ELA. So it's got a lot of built-in tools, just so you know. So you'll hear a lot about that now as the elementary school kind of gears up for computer-based testing. At the middle level, teachers said, let's go. And so we just went all in last year with CBT. So that is our first round. Math for us, again, you're gonna take a look at where we rank in the region, schools that we're chasing after and running alongside. We're still neck and neck with a couple that we like to watch to see how they're performing. Same exact concept that our teachers will be digging deeply into individual student and then across our program. I called 3 years worth of data a great question of your curriculum. How are we doing? How is our curriculum performing? So we now have 3 years worth of data that we're looking at to see what adjustments we should make. I want to talk specifically about grade 8 because you're going to see it here and ask yourself like, oh my goodness, we ended up 12th. That's not where we normally fall. You'll see it again if you go ahead and go right to the next slide, Jeremy. You're going to see the same thing when we start talking about we're 15th on New York State Science. Last year, just before we started the state assessments, we did get a pretty large opt-out movement that happened just with 8th grade. It sort of hit Facebook the night before. Mr. McCardle and I spent the next morning chasing it, trying to get as many parents to change their mind from kids that were walking in our building. So I do want you to know that when you're looking at 8th grade science and you're looking at 8th grade math, 8th grade science, we had 26 kids opt out. We tested 27, I think, total. 8th grade math, we had 29 kids that did not take that test. So it was about half of our population. So when you are doing a standardized measure like this, and this is something that we'll do a much better job this year at just trying to make sure the parents understand the New York State assessments, why we give them and why they matter to us. They matter to us because it is a ruler by which we are measuring children against other children across the state of New York. A teacher's grade book, teachers have full control over how that grade book looks. But when you get to the date of the state assessment, it's literally the same ruler for measurement, whether you're talking about children that are being educated in Caledonia-Mumford, Brighton, Pittsfield, doesn't matter, right? Go wherever you want to go in the state of New York, it's the same ruler. So I do personally like to see how our kids are measuring when they're compared to their same age peers across the state of New York. The number of our participation rate also matters for us. Like eventually the state of New York will say you don't have enough kids at a grade level taking assessments. So it does matter for us in a lot of ways, but if we don't get good solid data, like right now I would advise our 8th grade team not to dig too heavily into our New York State science results and not to dig too heavily into our New York State math results because it's not really a picture of how our kids did or how our curriculum is being deployed because not enough of our kids, the N of number of kids tested, isn't really high enough for us to say that it would be a good representation of how our kids are doing in mathematics. It's not a good representation of how they're doing in science. We would need to use lots of our own local measures to continue to make those decisions. So where our participation rates are high, those are really good numbers for you to be looking at and comparing us across the state. But for those two, I would advise against it.
And I would just point out, if we're not at 95% testing at each grade level, it also excludes us from honors that New York State would provide us, or in fact, we have earned. So getting to 95% total participation within the building, or buildings for that matter, are important for special recognitions.
Thank you. Any questions for me?
Okay, and number 3 for superintendent's report, the enrollment data.
Yeah, so I've shared with you, we had Beds Day last Wednesday, so that's the official tally for number of students that attend our school district. We're at 803, which is 4 less than last school year. Then I shared with you for all the students in our district boundaries. So those that attend out-of-district placements, private schools, homeschool students, and so forth. So we're at a total of 888 students community-wide, and you can see how our kids are attending schools in our region.
Okay. Any questions on the enrollment data? All right, we have no old business. Moving on to new business. Number 1, acceptance of gift to the school district. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, accept the gift of a monetary donation to the kindergarten grade level. This is in accordance with board policy number 5230. Motion, please.
I'll make it.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
So again, per board policy, the money will actually be given to the building account in the elementary school, and then Mr. Bolter and Mrs. Meyer will try to position that money to assist the kindergarten class.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Still no. That motion carried. Number 2, amending the 2023-2024 substitute rate. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, approve amending the sub rate per the attachment. Motion, please.
I'll make it.
And a second.
Second.
Discussion.
And again, the reason behind this change is that we have a veteran worker that has actually retired, has come back, and will be working with Mr. Nardone in the business office, and her pay requires higher than the rate we originally established.
And since it's sub rate, it's not subject to collective bargaining or anything?
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carried. Capital Improvement Project Resolution. Resolution of the Board of Education of the Caledonia-Mumford Central School District, Livingston County, New York. The district authorizing the submission of a proposition to be voted upon by the qualified voters of said district at a special meeting thereof to be held on December 5th, 2023. Whereas the Board of Education of the Caledonia-Mumford School District, Livingston County, New York, known as the district, proposes to have the district undertake a capital improvement project consisting of alterations, renovations, and improvement to the district's school buildings and associated facilities, including improvements to the district's elementary school and middle high school to enhance the safety, efficiency, and functionality of its buildings and facilities, including site improvements for various school purposes and other apparatus, and lost my spot because of that word, and related improvements, and the acquisition and installation in and around the foregoing improvements of original furnishings, equipment, machinery, apparatus, and technology improvements, and preliminary and incidental costs related thereto, all at the total estimated cost not to exceed $15,230,000, with such cost being raised by the expenditure of $2,750,000 from the district's existing 2022 Building Capital Reserve Fund, said fund being established pursuant to a proposition approved by the qualified voters of the district on May 17, 2022. and with the balance thereof not to exceed $12,480,000 being raised by a tax upon the taxable property of the district to be levied and collected in annual installments as provided in Section 416 of the Education Law, with such tax to be offset by New York State aid available therefor, and in anticipation of such tax by obligations of the districts as may be necessary. And whereas the board, acting as lead agency under the State Environmental Quality Review Act and regulations thereunder, collectively known as SECRA, by resolution adopted on August 8th, 2023, determined that, 1, the actions to be undertaken as part of the capital project constitutes a Type 2 action within the meaning of SECRA, and as such, item 2, no further actions under SECRA need to be undertaken. And whereas the Board of Education now intends to schedule a special meeting of qualified voters of the district to be held on December 5th, 2023, for the purpose of voting on a proposition on whether to authorize the district to undertake the capital project. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Caledonia-Mumford Central School District, Livingston County, New York as follows. Section 1, a special meeting of the qualified voters of the district shall be held in the district office at the Caledonia-Mumford Central School District located at 99 North Street, Caledonia, New York, on Tuesday, December 5th, 2023, with the polls to be open between the hours of 12 p.m. and 9 p.m. for the purpose of voting upon the following proposition. And there is one proposition, number 1, resolved that the Board of Education of this school district be authorized to undertake a capital improvement project consisting of alterations, renovations, and improvements to the district's school buildings and associated facilities, including improvements to the district's elementary school and middle high school to enhance the safety, efficiency, and functionality of its buildings and facilities, including site improvements for various school purpose and other related improvements, and the acquisition and installation in and around the foregoing improvements and preliminary and incidental costs related thereto. All at a total estimated cost not to exceed $15,230,000, with such cost being raised by the expenditure of $2,750,000 from the district's existing capital reserve fund that was established by voters, and with the balance thereof not to exceed $12,480,000 being raised by tax upon the taxable property of the district to be levied and collected in annual installments as provided in Section 416 of the Education Law, with such tax to be offset by New York State aid available therefor, and in anticipation of such tax by obligations of the districts as may be necessary. Section 2, said special meeting shall be called by the publication of a notice of special meeting subsequently in the form attached in this resolution as Exhibit A. The district clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish said notice of special meeting in the manner required by law in the Livingston County News, a newspaper of general circulation within the district. Section 3, voting on the above referenced proposition shall be by paper ballot with the full text of such proposition appearing therein. And number 4, this resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption. The question of the adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly put to vote on roll call with results as follows. Mr. Richter, aye. Mrs. Dahl?
Aye.
Mr. Bickford?
Aye.
Mr. Rich Licky?
Aye.
Mr. Fitch is absent. Mr. Belenick?
Aye.
And Mrs. Dietrich?
Aye.
Thank you. The resolution was thereupon declared duly adopted by a vote of 6 ayes and 0 nays. Number 4 under new business is the American Rescue Plan and state reserves.
Sorry, I do not have it up on the screen, but you all should have the backup notes. So every 6 months, we are required by law to give an update on the plan. We started this in October of 2022, did it again in April of 23. This is going to be one of our last ones. We got a final one that's going to take place either in March or April, depending on when we finalize these grants. So pretty much in your backup notes, you're going to see that our total federal grants was about $2.6 million. That consisted of CRRSA money and ARPA money. We spent all of CRRSA at the end of the 21-22 school year, and ARPA, we spent a good amount in 22-23. We have $664,000 remaining that we have to spend by September 30th of 2024. My goal is to have this closed out by June, just because it's really difficult to spend certain money over the summer months. There is one grant that relates to summer. The rest, unfortunately, has to do with your teaching staff. They're not here over the summertime. So it's a lot harder to spend that. Our minimum and maximum spending requirements, we cannot by law spend more or less than 12.5% or more than 62.5%. I put those levels down there for you, and I broke out the expense by year so you can see we are within those funding limits. So there's no issues there. We have our desk review that has been ongoing now. We were Group A, so we were one of the first audits. It's still going on because we have to submit an amendment. The amendment has been submitted. Once it gets approved, our grant and our audit should be fine and settled and closed out. And then we're just you're going to be held hostage to whatever the federal government and or the state wants to audit in the near future. But everything's been documented. The accounting system does a great job of making sure that we know which checks, which vendors were coming out of there. And again, if the review goes through, which it has minus the amendment, we know that we're spending within our plan and the write-ups that our principals did and school leaders. So does anybody have any questions? Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Number 5 under new business, acceptance of the annual audit report. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, accept the annual audit report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, as prepared by Mengel, Metzger, and Barr and Company, LLP, a Raymond F. Wagner CPA, or division of Raymond F. Wagner CPA. Motion, please.
I'll make it.
And a second.
Yep.
Any discussion? I will say that being in that meeting with the auditor, John, that gave the presentation, as I tried to outline there, we're doing very well, and I'd like to applaud our administration and business staff for handling all this federal grant money in a very responsible way. That was my only question to John in that meeting regarding how some of the numbers fell out. So, any questions about that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carried. And the corrective action plan per the management letter from the independent external audit report. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, approve the corrective action plan per the independent external audit report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Motion, please.
I'll make it.
And a second.
Yep.
John, discussion.
So from here, Jeremy will upload our actual audit and the correction action plan to New York State Education Department tomorrow.
And all of those corrective management letter things were very minor. Like, they had to find something to write us up for that. And in both cases, we had to do what was best for the district, just because it might not have fallen perfectly in line with something. And we will make those, Jeremy will make those corrections. So. Any further questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carried. Award of bid for the capital outlay project. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, award the capital outlay project to the lowest responsible bidder, Amring and Johnston. Motion, please.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion? What was in that again? The capital outlay.
P-TECH units in the elementary.
Thank you. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carried. New business number 8 and 9. It's the intermunicipal cooperative agreements. They're both the exact same, except 2 different school districts.
Correct. Actually, the minor changes with York, they don't share the same attorneys as ours. Ours is Harris Beach. So ours and the agreement with Leroy is unique because Harris Beach represents both districts. The changes that was proposed by the York board was acceptable by our attorney. So it's minor changes. You'll have to study it to see it, but nothing substantial.
Okay, so resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, approve intermunicipal cooperative agreement with an 8 York Central School District and 9 Leroy Central School District regarding the transportation of students in the event of a driver or bus shortage for the 2023-2024 school year per the attached resolution. Motion, please.
I'll make it.
And a second.
Yep.
Any more discussion or
Yeah, so
questions?
the biggest difference for those that have been on the board for a long time, we've had agreements with York and Leroy probably from 2012 through 2018 or 19. And that was predominantly sharing of buses, loaning of buses. At that time, we only had one active handicap bus, and if that was ever to either going through inspection and so forth, or if it ever went down, we didn't have another bus to transport our handicapped children. In this case, we are actually loaning of school buses, and in addition to, if we were ever short a driver, they would send their driver and their bus to us, and vice versa, we would return the favor in them. As you know, we are all in a pinch right now, and I'm happy that the other two superintendents agreed to this. And now their boards, York, we'll discuss this next weekend, I think the 16th, and the Roy's approving it tonight at their board meeting. So that's the biggest difference for those that have been around a while.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. That motion carried. Executive session resolved that the Board of Education adjourn to executive session at 6:56 PM to discuss the employment and employee history of particular persons and confidential student records protected by FERPA. Motion, please.
Yep.
John, in a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carried. We'll be back. Our resolve that the Board of Education return to regular session at 7:42 PM. We have personnel left on the agenda. I would like a motion for personnel 1 through 7 as laid out in the agenda. Appointment of, number 1, appointment of an extracurricular advisor. Number 2, appointment of accounts payable position. Number 3, approval of substitute nurse. Number 4, appointment of long-term substitute middle high school special education teacher. Number 5, permanent appointment of cafeteria monitor. Number 6, appointment of coaches. Number 7, approval of school to work students. Have a motion, please.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carried. Adjournment. Resolved that the Board of Education adjourn the meeting of October 10th, 2023 at 7:43 PM. Motion, please.
You bet.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Everybody have a good night.